Welcome to Table Talk with Brenda Perryman right here on TV 33, WHPR, Comcast 91 in Detroit and all over the world, courtesy of the World Wide Web. So we're streaming too. But also besides that, if you want to call in on our discussion, you could call us at 313-868-0342 or 868-0351 or 861-4336. And I'd like my two co-hosts to introduce themselves, and then my other co-host, he'll be on in just a few minutes. So, Jerome?
Jerome Buffington, Business Development Manager for VNA, Visiting Nurses Association of Michigan.
Great. Good morning. My name is Darnell McLaurin. I'm a public servant as well as a union delegate.
Yes, we decided, since Daron and I have seen the film, to just spend a few moments of table talk talking about the film. Now, just prior to this show, we had a gentleman call in and say he doesn't care to see it, this, that, and the other thing, which is everyone's prerogative. Like, I saw Girls Trip. It was okay. It wasn't the best movie I'd seen, but it was okay. It was okay. I mean, but I think if somebody didn't get me to go, I would have waited for cable. So you could wait to cable, but sometimes you'll see it. So I want to say to Darnell, in those days, they didn't have a whole bunch of black firefighters, did they?
Of course not. They had a few, but the mass hiring of blacks didn't start until 1977.
Under Coleman A. Young's administration. Okay, what did you think of?
I think it was a good movie. I think people have to prepare themselves to see it. And when I say prepare themselves, it is very emotional. It's emotionally draining to see for 2 hours, and not to give anything away in regards to the movie, but for 2 hours to see people like yourselves tormented for no good reason. It's a lot, and it kind of reflects some of the same things that are going on today, and those feelings. Also, most times with movies, there's always a happy ending. There's always a feel-good moment. This was not one of those stories. This is not one of those stories where, you're going to get that feel-good moment. You're going to get that hero. You're going to get someone to come in and save the day. It's that feeling where, God, how can you let this happen?
Well, for one thing, like I mentioned on the show before, there are many, many stories that week. That I always call it that July week, because if you were there, if you're around, you can't get rid of the images, you can't get rid of what happened. And if you want to call in, please call in if you've seen it too. But never in my lifetime living in Detroit was 12th a two-way street. They had cars parked one direction going north and one direction going south. That was at the beginning, right after the raid. I said, oh no, I don't see that. I don't see that. At first I said maybe it's a police car. No, it was regular cars. So if you, anyway, if you want to call in, please do. Also, I thought the acting was good. I thought the intensity.
Acting was very, very good.
Very, very good. And as I said, I got an opportunity to interview even the bad cop.
Oh.
I interviewed him, even that guy. He played the heck out of that role.
Especially to not be from America.
Not be from America. And as I mentioned before, I asked John Boyega, who played the security guard. I asked him, I said, how did you learn to speak in the Midwestern dialect? And he said, of course, we watch Boys in the Hood. We love African-American movies. And he said he got it from the African-American movies because he did a really, really good job, too. All of them did. And one of the girls was from England.
Oh, really?
One of the girls was from England.
She's on my show, Game of Thrones. Yeah, she is.
Oh, she is?
Yeah.
Oh. And
You're a fanatic, huh?
No.
you watch, I got to start Game of Thrones from the beginning. My brother, like I told everybody, he was arrested that week for curfew. And honestly, he says to me, he asked me, am I in the movie? Because I want my money if I'm in the movie, you know. I said, no, you're not in the movie, but that's all I can laugh about. Um, anyway, I thought the acting was good. Movies, especially movies that are so-called documentaries,
Yeah.
yeah. Sometimes when there's a lot of fiction in it, and they change the names of some. Now you notice when they had the dramatics, because the dramatics are involved in this movie, because they were waiting to perform. That's not, you'll see that in the beginning of the movie. It's not a big giveaway. But as I told everybody before, Ron Banks was at the hotel, but his mother came and got him. That's the reason he wasn't tied up in that mess. But also, Larry Reed. They used his real name, but you see, as he was talking to the rest of the
He even got a
guys.
cameo.
Oh, he did?
Yes, yes. When they were in the recording, you can see him.
Oh,
actually
yes, he was
like a sound
standing.
engineer.
Right. Well, I felt so bad for him,
Yeah.
but his character his name was said, but as he was talking to the other dramatics, you notice he never said one of
No,
their
they
names.
Never said their name.
Never said their names, and I guess that was purposeful.
I have a question because the gentleman did call earlier.
Yes.
And he said he wouldn't go see it because of the emotional toll that it would probably have on him. And so my question is, do you believe that the reason why, or part of the reason why this story isn't told or well known to people who are born and raised right here in the city of Detroit is because of the emotional toll that it may take? And the reason why I ask is because I grew up on Atkinson between 12th and Woodrow Wilson, and the Blind Pig actually sat on a corner of Atkinson and 12th. And
I mean,
although they
on
mentioned,
Woodward. I thought it was on Woodward.
no, 12th and Claremont. They say 12th and Claremont, but it was actually the corner of 12th and Atkinson, which is the park. It's a park now where I used to get free lunches as a kid, and I played at.
Okay.
Right? And so the
Right.
dramatics, speaking of the dramatics, they were there this last weekend. They had a big ceremony, dedication about the movie and everything, and it was at the actual location where the Blind Pig was. But growing up on that block and literally walking out of my house, I used to go to the corner and play at that park all the time. 3-5 years right after the riot, nobody talked about it. Nobody talked about it. I mean, growing up on that block, I should have known that it was significant, in the history.
Well, it prepared me for New York because a few years later, I was in New York. We had just gotten to my older brother's apartment, and the lights started flickering, and it went out. And we were in Brooklyn, and all of a sudden, there were stores, department stores and grocery stores right on the corner. People started putting chains on the gates, and they pulled the gates out. They started looting and all this stuff, and my mother was yelling out the window, "Put that stuff back." I said, "No, grandmother, that's not the way you riot. Come back, come back." But it prepared me. I tell you, it was nothing in New York like what we experienced here.
What was you going to say? I wanted to hear.
I don't think that's the reason it wasn't told.
I talked about it every year.
Even when we went to the discussion panel with the actors, a lot of them, and it's really a shame that a lot of them didn't know anything about riots. A couple of actors said they had never known about any riots in America or things of that
And
sort.
when I interviewed Laz Alonso, he said he had never heard of the riot, and he's older, and it's not a part of history. I don't think they even taught it in Detroit.
And so, right, but that's on a larger scale. I'm talking about right here in the city of Detroit.
That's what I'm saying.
It's okay.
And even to that fact, the gentleman said that he wouldn't go see it. I encourage people to go see it because I don't think people realize everything that went on, or how trying those times, were, or how people had to position themselves just to stay alive.
Right.
And it's really sad. And I say it's reflected again today in some of the incidences. Even I was looking at reading a story the other day about 3 young guys, and they even had video in Texas, We're cutting grass. They have a lawn service. A couple of them are home from school. We're cutting grass, and this policeman pulls up, stops the young man because he's going door to door, and he's actually putting his lawn service flyers in the doors. He stops him, asks for his name. The boy gives his name, asks him for ID. Say he doesn't have ID because he's working. They were actually working on a yard. He said, well, I see you going door to door. He pulls out the card, shows the officer, yes, I'm just putting my card in the door. And the officer then proceeds to really badger this young man. And it was very disheartening. I mean, he asked him, the young man asked him, he said, well, you're asking me, for my name, what's the problem? He said, well, I'm investigating. He said, investigating what? I haven't done anything. And he said, well, what's your name and your badge number? And at that point, the policeman said, well, we can handle this a different way, and pulls out the handcuffs. And the boy said, no, you're not going to arrest me. I haven't done anything. I'm just working. And just to see this transpire, the only difference I think today is we have video.
Right.
We have video.
Well, I said at the end of this movie, the more things change, the more they remain the same.
Yes.
We're only going to talk about this about 4 more minutes, and what I want to do is next week maybe talk about it a little more, because it opens today in a limited release and then all over the place next Friday. So more people will have had an opportunity to see it. We have a call. We're going to take this call real quick. Good morning.
Yes, good morning. In 1967, I was 26 years old, and I was unemployed. And I was, we would cut, a lot of unemployed would gather and would talk about things, and the police would come by and disturb us. But the police was not the spark. The spark was economics. And the police just fanned it and caused the fire. But and here's what's amazing with those people who sponsored that movie, which I thought was disgraceful, have a red carpet for an event that was expressing the misery of people at that time. But in Atlanta, in San Francisco, in Baltimore, Maryland, in North New Jersey, Chicago, Brooklyn, and Detroit. In 1967, you had riots in all those cities. What was the thread that ran through that? They were suburbanizing all the jobs out of Newark.
Okay, I'm going to have to disagree with you on that, because in that day, especially in 1967, I had friends, even my boyfriend at the time, had a job at Chrysler and a job at Ford. I knew people who had 2 and 3 jobs. Then the jobs started really dissipating. But I'm telling you, at that time, I knew everybody was working.
That's not true.
Well,
49% of the
I'm
people
telling you my reality.
in Detroit
Well, that's
did not
my
have a
reality.
job. Only 51.1%.
I don't want to hear that percentage. I don't want to hear it.
Depression. At 25%, that's for
No.
3/4 is classified as
Well,
depression
I'm
in this
just
country.
telling you what I know. What I know.
I know,
for
but
sure.
I lived it.
I lived it too. I lived it too.
I was a man.
I wasn't
You was a
born in
little girl.
1970. Okay, thank you, Tyrone.
And you should learn from your elders.
Hey, I know. I'm an elder.
Okay.
I'm an elder. Okay. Sorry, everybody. Well, next week we're going to talk more on the riot, and I'm going to go to a quick break so we could bring Ellis up here and we start talking about drug testing. So we'll start talking about that in just a minute.